Despite all his rage, he's still just Nicolas Cage. Despite all his rage, he's still just Nicolas Cage. And someone will say his career can never be saved. Despite all his rage, he's still just Nicolas Cage.
Hey guys, time for another installment of Just Nicolas Cage, where I very slowly work my way through Nicolas Cage's filmography. Today I'm talking about the 1993 movie Amos and Andy. So in Amos and Andy, Samuel Jackson plays a Pulitzer Prize winner who lives in a nice house on an island. But his neighbors don't know that the old owners of the house have moved out, and they see a black guy holding stereo equipment and assume that he's robbing the place. The police get called in and fire a gun at him, but when the police chief realizes the terrible mistake and how much it will hurt his election run for commissioner, he stages this elaborate cover-up where he gets a convict played by Nicolas Cage to take Sam Jackson hostage and pretend to be the guy that was shooting at him. And over the course of the movie, maybe they learn a little bit about each other. So it might not sound like it from the premise, but this movie is a comedy. Yeah, it's a comedy about an innocent black guy being harassed by the police due to racial profiling. That's a tough one to pull off, and I've got to say, this movie does not succeed. The premise obviously involves some very sensitive subject matter. Sadly, there's countless cases like this in America with people mistaking innocent black people for criminals. In fact, 16 years after this movie came out, a black guy called Henry Louis Gates Jr. was arrested after his front door was jammed and a passerby thought he was breaking in. Pretty similar to this, and it's certainly a topic that's still relevant. And the thing is, a comedy about systemic racism can certainly work. Jordan Peele's Get Out comes to mind. That did that very well. But the problem with Amos and Andrew is that the comedy that this movie goes for is just cheap, silly gags. The neighbors have sex toys in their drawer, and there's a surprising amount of wacky dog jokes in this movie too.
Sit! Not you.
I think if you're going to do a comedy like this, you got to make sure that the comedy is tight and the satire is sharp. I mean, Jojo Rabbit was a comedy set during the Holocaust, but the humor and the harsh reality of the situation was mixed so perfectly. Here, not so much. As for the performances, Sam Jackson is very good. He definitely comes out the movie with the most dignity. He's very likable in it, and he gives the best performance of the movie. And he's pretty much the only character that's not a complete caricature. Nicolas Cage plays a character kind of similar to his role in Raising Arizona and Wild at Heart. You know, a kind of hapless criminal. Except here his character is a lot less lovable and kind of racist. One of the criminal charges against his character, by the way, was for having a relationship with a minor. And Cage's character says, "Oh, I thought she was 18. But I think that's a bad backstory to give a character that you kind of want the audience to somewhat root for. And to make things worse, later on in the movie he meets a girl that says she's 17, and then he just flirts with her. So that's a really weird thing to his character. Nick Cage is entertaining in this movie, though. Probably the best scene in the whole film is when he does this random monologue while smoking a joint about sea monkeys. It's quite a well-acted little scene, actually, and parts like this with Sam Jackson and Nick Cage bonding are definitely the highlights of the movie. Although it is kind of funny that there's this whole scene about sea monkeys in a movie about racism, when apparently the creator of Sea Monkeys was literally a neo-Nazi. Now, if that's why they included that in the movie, that's very clever. But I don't think this movie is subtle enough to give it that much credit. But yeah, if the scene ended with Sam Jackson going, "Yeah, that's a nice story. By the way, did you know that the creator of Sea Monkeys endorsed the Ku Klux Klan?" Then that might have been kind of funny. There's some other good actors in the supporting cast too. You've got Brad Dourif, who's one of my favorite character actors. He's been in Lord of the Rings and Chucky. A few days ago I watched an episode of Star Trek Voyager where he was like the bad guy in it. He was brilliant. But here he's like the wacky, idiot, comic relief character. Which I think is a waste of Brad Dourif. If you're gonna have him in a movie, have him play like a cold-blooded psychopath. Another good actor that's underused is Giancarlo Esposito. Apparently he's meant to be a parody of Reverend Al Sharpton. There's a whole subplot about him leading a troop of protesters, only for one of them to accidentally burn down Sam Jackson's house, and then he runs away and he's not in the rest of the movie. I think it's trying to say, look, even the black activists can make mistakes. I guess that ties into the whole point that this movie is trying to make, where it's not so much about cut and dry racism, it's more so showing that in the discussion of racism, hypocrisy and misguided actions can be found in everybody. The liberal lawyer that defended the Chicago 7 can also say that if you see a black guy with stereo equipment, he's up to no good. That's kind of an interesting concept to explore in a movie, but this mediocre slapstick comedy is not the outlet for it. Do the Right Thing did something somewhat similar and way better. In fact, I was thinking what would this movie be like if it was a Spike Lee joint. I mean, you've already got some of his collaborators, like Sam Jackson and Giancarlo Esposito. It probably would have been messy and heavy-handed, but it'd be a lot more interesting than this, probably. There is one thing about this movie, though, that I absolutely loved. and that's the end credit song. It's called Suburban Nightmare by Sir Mix-a-Lot, and it's a rap that recaps the whole plot of the movie. And I mean, it really walks you through almost every beat and plot point of the film.
The police chief is running for commissioner, but if I get out of this, chief, I'm getting ya. Chief needs a cover-up plan, cause he heard I'm famous. Call a crazy white boy, name was Amos. I thought Amos was a burglar, but when he saw me, he said I never heard of ya.
I always get a kick out of it when a movie ends with a rap that ties in with the plot of the movie. I watched the remake of Assault on Precinct 13 recently, and that movie ends with a rap by KRS-One where he's talking about like Ethan Hawke and Lawrence Fishburne in the movie. But this one I non-ironically enjoy. I mean, the effort that went into the lyrics of this is commendable. And here I was thinking Sir Mix-a-Lot was just a guy that liked big butts. Overall, Amos and Andrew is a movie with good intentions. I mean, I see what they were going for. But outside of the good performances and the killer end credit song, it's just mostly a forgettable and unfunny movie. And I really don't particularly recommend it. So the next movie Nicolas Cage was in was called Red Rock West. And until then, guys, thanks for watching.